Hello, everyone. My name is Younas, and welcome to the vFairs Epic Events podcast. Here we chat with the best in the events industry to uncover trends, share best practices, and explore what makes events truly unforgettable. If you want to stay ahead in the world of events, hit subscribe and join the conversation. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Martin to the podcast. Martin is a seasoned expert with over 16 years of experience in product impactful B2B events. He's co-founder of Event Driven Growth, has a knack for transforming events from simple checkboxes into powerful growth engine for venture-backed startups. Martin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Very, very excited. I've been doing my own podcast for such a long time now. It's nice to be on the other side of the microphone. But I'll be honest, it's a different kind of nervous. It is a different kind of nervous, but I'm excited all the same.
Yeah, no, same here. Like, and again, I do podcast both as a host and as just as a guest. And you're right. Both of them has its own kind of nervousness, like feelings that one goes through. Martin, again, tell me what made you get into the events industry? Walk us through your journey of you being in this industry now.
It was a massive accident. I get the feeling that most people fall into it a little bit accidentally. But mine personally was, I happened to move countries. So I grew up on the Isle of Man and I moved to Wales just at the time because I was young and foolish and didn't think ahead, moved countries. And it was the first year of the banking crisis. So we're talking 2007 probably ish. And I couldn't find a job. I literally could not find a job anywhere at all. And it got so bad that I was doing door-to-door sales. I was selling cable television door-to-door through a British window. It wasn't a fun experience. There was genuinely one time where they didn't become a customer, but I knocked on their door and I was literally drenched to the bone. And they just let me in, gave me a cup of tea, just let me use their toilet and stuff like that. So I didn't want to stay doing that for long. And an opportunity came up doing sponsorship sales for an events company. And I took it. And when I got there, it was a very kind of like a very sales floor. It was a very kind of sales floor. So, we'd have to kind of stand up to pitch our sponsorships and so on and so forth. And everyone around me was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe they force us to stand up. I'm like, I've got a roof over my head. I'll stand up all day long and pitch. I have a roof. I am not getting wet every day. And I don't know, it was a bizarre thing because it didn't necessarily feel like work. It was hard and you had to constantly grow, but it felt more like playing a sport than it did having a job. And I was very poor to start with. I was very, very bad. I did not have the gift of the gab that some other people did have, which I think helped in the end because it forced me to learn and grow instead of letting the ego get involved and thinking I could just do it. So, and I just never turned away, just never turned back.
Very inspiring story. And again, a lot of people ask us about the kind of job that we are in and, how tough the job is, being an events, just an events producer, kind of an event professional and so forth. And sometimes, and again, I also genuinely believe that it's one of the toughest jobs out there in the world. But then you realize there are more jobs tougher than that part, being a door salesman, sometimes just being in this position, one has to realize that, no matter how tough it is, sometimes we just love it. And that's why we do it. That's why we're in this profession now. But just seeing from what led you into this very inspiring story. Martin, guide us a little bit, like what you're doing now. Tell us a bit more about event driven growth and what you have been doing. So if you can put an insight on that one.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been doing kind of executive dinners since about 2016, and I did much larger events before that. And the executive dinner was a series called The Hearth, which was based on the motto "Friends help each other," which was very successful. It was very great. I was getting loads of great feedback over years. And it's got to a point where I know everything about, well, never say you know everything, but at this point, running an executive dinner has got such a kind of like pattern to it that I feel ultra confident in being able to run one. But it also means that I've run, pandemic aside, like 10 a year since 2016. So I'm a creative at heart. So I miss the design. I miss the strategy. I miss the production, the analytics, like everything like that goes into a full event strategy. So I've switched now into event-driven growth, which is a budding agency specifically to help kind of VC-backed startups, because a lot of startups were the sponsors that I'd work with on my dinners. And I would just see so many mistakes. I would see them making so many like bad investments and mistakes in their event strategy. One, for example, they just got their VC funding and they wanted to get a booth at the biggest show, right? The first thing they wanted to do. So they bought this booth space, a big booth space, and they realized that then you've got to build the booth, you've got to staff the booth and all of the things, and they didn't have the knowledge or insight in-house to be able to do that. So they ended up just putting a bucket in the center of their booth with some branded socks and a QR code, and it cost them tens of thousands of dollars. Needless to say, they didn't get the return on that investment, and that's just one of so many horror stories that happens when, you've got the capital to spend to utilize events, but without the resources and expertise to be able to deliver.
Martin, I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to kind of step back and ask you selfishly about how to run a great executive dinner. If high level, there's a certain playbook, because again, even us as a company, we run exactly 10 customer dinners a year. And we have our own playbook also. And I'm sure like that's true for a lot of other companies out there. But high level, just like, can you give us your playbook on how to run a successful customer dinner?
Yes, absolutely. I would say the first thing is understanding the reason why people want to go there. One of the things that I think I've seen a lot with customer dinner is, I don't think it's as bad now, but it certainly was like either side of the pandemic, and particularly before the pandemic, is you go to a dinner, there would be a talk involved or a panel discussion and everything like that. Why do people go to a dinner? They go to network. Nobody's networking while there's a keynote speech going. There's a panel discussion going. So I'm a big believer in honing in on the reason that you're creating the thing. Like everything as well, like the goals, the metrics, everything is designed around what the thing is designed to achieve. So if it's a dinner, I believe a dinner is mostly focused around networking. I think there's a lot of books that talk about the importance of food and how it connects to culture, the idea of breaking bread in diplomacy. I think there's a great book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi that gives so much information on the nature of food and dinners. So I think it's hard to do high level when there's so much information involved, but I think kind of leaning into what the dinner is designed for is absolutely crucial. And then making sure that you have a onboarding process. A lot of people think that, as soon as someone's registered, that's it. And I'm not talking about just firing them logistics. They signed up because they were excited about the idea. Excitement wanes over time. So you need to find ways of keeping that excitement spike up between the moment that they say yes and the moment that they turn up. Would probably be my big highlights.
Sounds good. And just is there a certain for a dinner, is there a certain number that's too less or that's too much? Again, less than 3 people, does it matter? Or more than 50 people, does it defeat the purpose of that? having a meal together with a group of people where you can network, maybe not with everyone, but at least with some of the people. I'm just going to ask you one question. And again, as I said, like I'm asking it selfishly because
perfectly good.
Especially because we do that a lot. One of the things that we have started doing is that because the goal is networking, and I absolutely agree with you. And again, we have stopped doing any of the presentations and so forth. Maybe just 5 minutes, 10 minutes highlight of what else we have to offer as a company to our prospects and customers. Is that we request them upfront that if it will be okay, that we'll have them change seats after the main course is done, so that they have desserts with someone else. Because otherwise, with a dinner, you are stuck with 3 to 4 people just around you, and most of the conversations you're happening is with just those 3 to 4 people. Other than the drinks part or maybe the catch up after, but during the meal itself, if you have switched seats at least one time, then rather than having 3 to 4 conversations, you have at least have had 7 to 8. You just get more out of the same dinner. Any tips around that piece, if that is something that you have seen works or not?
What I could do is I can give you my format.
Yep.
Like the exact format that I've used and designed, which I think may help. So first of all, round tables, never long tables. Absolutely round tables. Have some kind of roundtable discussion during the food with a strong moderator, so that the idea is that if you're there as an attendee, you're not just networking with the people beside you, you're networking with the entire table, because people are giving their insights into the topic. They're like, everybody's trying to solve the same problem around this table. Right? That's kind of like how I like to think about it. And then you have 3 different topics and I'll tell you, 3 tables, 10 to 12 people per table, 45 minutes per session. Moderators move around the tables so that each table has a different topic to discuss over 3 courses of the meal. Each one is 45 minutes in length. So ditch dessert. Don't do dessert, because only about half people have dessert.
True.
So
yeah.
So instead I go like a salad course or a soup course, then the appetizer, then the entree. Each one happens during the course of these discussions. That's bookended by 2 open 45-minute networking sessions, so people can meet other people from other tables. But what you can do is you can craft the seating around the tables based on some pre-event questionnaires, right? So you're sitting people with similar goals and objectives. That's my format. That works really well.
Those
so feel free to copy, steal it.
Those are golden words. And again, I'm sure our team will get a lot of reels out of it. Here's your 2-minute, kind of golden words pitch on how to best go about it. Moving from these executive dinners back to events, what's the best B2B event you have attended to date? And why did you think that was one of the best, if not the best event that you have attended so far? Yeah,
I know which B2B is the best that I would like to attend and never have. Workhuman.
Oh, really? Okay,
would be one that I would love to go to. But the best one that I've attended, none. How bad is that?
Yeah.
Genuinely none.
And
I can't think of a single one. I think so. I've been to a bunch of trade shows. I don't understand trade shows anymore. I don't understand the role they play. I think we're into a little bit of a position where we just can't let go of them a little bit. Yeah. So I don't like those. I don't get invited to a lot of, C-suite events and things like that. So I don't get to experience a lot of those. I did go to one very, very good one that was hosted by a company called NewsCred ages ago. That was very entertaining simply because they embraced the edutainment element of an event, and they had some very, very good speakers. So it was good fun. But I think one of the kind of core problems with a lot of B2B events is that they don't have that big transformational takeaway. You don't, you go there, you listen to a bunch of speakers, and you've learned something. But because there's not usually a narrative or an end, or, you know, every hero's journey, every story has a mechanic that makes it work. And yet B2B events, we haven't harnessed that same element. So I don't think there are many times that I can think of where I've left a B2B event, like I have done with, like, say, a Tony Robbins event or something like that, where I've genuinely felt an implementable big change.
So let's get into B2C event. And again, Tony Robbins, we powered the event tech for them for their Germany event last year, 2024. And
amazing.
Again, of course, we were not attendees, but we did feel that when more than 10,000 plus attendees were just leaving the event as if their life has changed forever. Now, I said I wasn't a participant, so I don't know what they went through. Like, we just know that I've never seen so many people happy in one place and something remarkable has happened. But just walk me through it, what are just how can what's the checklist of making these events just memorable and just having such kind of an impact in attendees' life in this case? Business is different thing, but in this case, as if people's life are changing now after they have been to that event.
Yeah, for sure. I think the kind of Tony Robbins one is a good example, even though it is B2C. When it's events, there's not that much difference, because ultimately the attendee is the customer. They're there to have their own experience at the event. There's very little difference. I remember going to a particular event and happened to work for a company that had on the name badge, we shortened the company name. So it looked like I worked for a much bigger company. Or it didn't really, but some people would read it and they would get hyper-focused on the fact that it said this big company's name. And so it's like, oh, you're here. And they'd be really kind to me and really open with me. Some of your friends are coming, blah, blah, blah. And then they realize, oh, no, I don't work for them. I work for this other company that I would not get treated the same way. So we have to remember this is B2B event, is still a B2C experience. But for the Tony Robbins thing, both the virtual program, like you mentioned, and the in-person ones that I've been to, is Tony Robbins gets them to a certain place before they attend the event, right? People that are going to pay for the ticket, and bearing in mind I paid $5,000 for the ticket for his Date with Destiny program, I was ready to pay $5,000 for that ticket. I had experienced various kind of book programs and things like that, so I knew what it was going to be. I liked Tony Robbins. I trusted Tony Robbins, and I've kind of done that the wrong way around. And I knew Tony Robbins. Know, like, trust. 3 things that are absolutely crucial. If you're running an experience, you have to understand that to run an experiential event, you have to get them to that point first. So they know what to expect from you. They know who you are. They like who you are. They trust who you are. So if you're asking for them to dive into an experience where they have to maybe come out of their shell or do something that is maybe not part of their day-to-day, they know that's going to happen. They're expecting that to happen, and they trust that it's a safe space for them to do that. So in a Tony Robbins event case, you dance around like a maniac. You walk along hot coals. You scream and shout and have this experience, but it's safe to do so. And there are 10,000 people around you all doing that same thing. If you're trying to do that when people don't know you, don't like you yet, or don't trust you yet, and you're asking them to jump up and down or do like a yoga at 7 a.m. in the morning, that's a tougher ask.
And again, so for the Tony Robbins, because we do both virtual and in-person tech, we were there for the in-person one. And again, as I mentioned, it was, as you were saying, people, of course, go and attend that event because they know Tony Robbins, most of you like him, and then, by that time, trust him as well. And again, ticket price, as you mentioned, on average, $5,000. And this, if you think about it, even most B2B events don't have that kind of average price point, in general, from an attendee perspective. So you're absolutely right that I think in his case, the B2C are in a way B2B anyways, because these are people who have their own small startups or even big startups or
Often,
big
yeah,
companies, and they're just trying to change their life or business, beyond a certain point. Uh, few more questions again, because you attend a lot of these events and you craft a lot of those events. Let's get into just again few checklist points. The registration experience. Are
yeah.
you someone who like that registration experience to be quick, which is first and last an email address if it's a paid event, pay for the price, or do you like it to be kind of a long registration form where you capture a lot of things what people are looking for, and then from there create a very personalized experience for them? So small, quick registration forms, or again, long registration forms in order to, with the hope that you will add more value. Which side of the
Yeah.
table are you in?
Little bit of both, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but I like to split it up. So I think the moment that you kind of captured their attention, they say, yes, I would like to attend this event, whether it's ticketed or a paid ticket or not, is only the beginning of their journey to turning up. So what I like to design is yes gates, what I call yes gates. I think there are other names for similar concepts, and it's basically just stages for people to go through in the onboarding process to get them to show up to the event. And I like to have really short registration at point one. To be honest with you, for my executive dinners, I didn't even have a registration. The moment they say yes, it's like, okay, great. What's your email address? That's it. So instead, I design steps all the way up. 7 steps is my favorite number. I think there's no real science behind that. I think I read in a sales book around about like 7 steps to get the yes, right? But that was years ago, so I'm not sure how relevant that is now. But I like 7 regardless. And I put that extra information, that extra like stuff that you would put in a complex registration form within one of those yes gates. And it'll be things like, you're also asking things like dietary requirements as well, right? Which is very, very important. Another step that I have for the executive dinners is they have to get on a 15-minute call with me, right? It's about networking. If you can't spare 15 minutes with me, then you're not going to turn up to the event. And so what the gates do is that allows you as an event producer to understand who's going to turn up and who's going to drop out. If they're not completing the gates, then there's increasing less likelihood that they're going to show up. So you can start to fill those gaps with people with new people. So you kind of constantly just very, very light friction, which I think kind of goes against a little bit of event theory where you want it to be frictionless. Yep. I think if you've got limited seating, if you've got unlimited seating, frictionless, sure. But if you've got limited, you want to kind of create a little bit of friction to make sure that people are taking those steps to attend. The more yeses you get during that phase, the more likely they are to actually be there.
And Martin, how much do you think location matters for these dinners, or even for an event, which is again for dinner, like which restaurant am I being invited to? Is it going to be, an experience that I want to go through and so forth? And same thing sometimes go for an event, right? Same event, same speakers, same content, same networking opportunity in Dublin and Ireland might get a totally different, group of people signing up versus, let's say, a less known or, like location. So what's your take?
Yeah. It's kind of a varied answer. But I could take the first step in terms of like the physical location itself. From my experience, the idea of having a marquee location is one that is mostly ego, mostly. Because when I first started doing executive dinners, I would painstakingly look for a location, like a really kind of cool location, good menu, these basement restaurants. Couple of problems. They're pretty hard to find. Yeah. And because they're usually independent, if you've got a format which requires like meals showing up a certain time and things like that, they struggle oftentimes to handle the logistics and specifics of an event. Then you can get ambient noise of the main restaurant upstairs. And I found it to be quite disruptive. I found it did not help in terms of whether people would attend or not. It didn't make a difference there. It would be disruptive in the environment itself. The only upside that I saw was post-event. There was a little bit of bragworthy, but that was offset by the negative of poor logistics. So I've honestly found just a hotel conference room. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look fancy, but it's often very accessible. They have already dealt with a lot of challenge that could come from dietary requirements or disability access. A lot of these things are kind of taken care of for you. We've got this saying, like, I don't know if you watch any football or soccer, but we've got this saying that the best referees are the ones that you don't notice in the match. And I feel like that's a good way to think about the location and who you're booking to deal with a lot of those elements.
Interesting. Martin, just within the events industry, what are your top, 2 to 3 events that you have attended, you like attending just every year?
It's changing now. It's such a bizarre space because I think we're in a position right now post-pandemic where, I mean, maybe it's the circles that I network with. So I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this actually. But like going to a lot of the major events, I don't find people are really talking about the event itself. It's more like collection space for people to come around the world, because we're all part of these Slack communities and various online communities. So we use these key hubs to meet with people. So for me right now, wanting to network with so many events professionals, it's things like IMEX. But am I that bothered about IMEX?
Yeah.
Like a bit. It's not a bad show by any stretch of the imagination. It's actually a great show. But I'm there to meet with the people that I want to meet with. So
I know of people, of course, I think we all know IMAX, but I know of people who actually travel for IMAX but never actually go to the show. Like, and they haven't even bought the ticket for that. Like, they're just there because they know that that's where they will, in all cases, they'll go out for a dinner or, like in breakfast in the same hotel. They'll find out the people that they want to network with just over there anyways. And also speaking, it's that time when these people are also more available to network, because when you are in the show, of course, everyone is trying to go from one session to another or, walking around the trade show. But there's a point to that, which is it about the event itself for many, or is it about just the people that they want to network with? Because we all work from remotely, different cities, different countries, etc. And that's one of the places where you can, just find out people that you want to network with in general.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at very specifically in this moment, for sure.
So even for that, so IMAX, you mentioned maybe it's one of them. Any other just purely like, that comes in your mind that at least gives a place to network with event tech professionals or event professionals in general?
One of my favorite things to do, less so attend because I host them, but there's a book called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. Oh, God, I wish I could remember the author's name, but I didn't expect to be talking about it. But Nick Gray, and it's brilliant. It's so much fun. It's incredibly easy to produce, and you can produce your own networking event locally. And generally, that's how I meet people. That's how I really, really like to meet people. So I do those kind of locally here. And like if more people were doing them, I would attend other people's as well, because they're just they're a low ask. They're really casual, great way to network. They're wonderful to produce as well.
I attend a lot of those, and sometimes I even host few because I'm part of this other membership. It's called Sync a Set, like 5 to 7, 2 hours. You come, you network. It's usually, around cocktails and mocktails, etc. Like, you're done with work, 5 o'clock, you go and, someone is hosting it and you get to meet with, I don't know, anywhere from 15 to 25 people in 2 hours. As I said, always, when the great thing about networking events that even if you have had like 1, 2, 3 good conversations, you feel that you have got something out of it. It's worth the time and money if you have spent any money on it.
As long as the networking event is designed for networking, rather than the happy hour thing. If it's just a happy hour, that's not networking. That's just throwing people in a room and letting the extroverts stand out. You've got to create a way of including everybody. It can't just be passive.
Martin, I know that we are almost on time. Just like when you're running some of these, again, hosting some of these events, like what are some of the key metrics that you track that measure the success of the events? Because with events, what's really hard is that, are you looking after, the NPS score? Are you looking after the, leads generated or the sales numbers? Like, what do you typically look for when you're doing this with your customers or for your own events?
Tracking, controversially, very little. One of the best, so I've asked a lot of people about tracking. It's probably a podcast of its own. One of the best answers when I've asked this question was actually given to me by someone I spoke to at Mind Valley. If you're familiar with Mind Valley, so Mind Valley run A-Fest, which is their B2C, huge B2C event, but they do tons of B2B programs as well. And he said that the only thing we track are things that are going to help us improve our event. And the reason being is, like, we know events work. Like, we don't need to track the sales process. We know they work. We trust that they work. We have faith that they work. The only thing we need to know is how we can make our events better. And there are some things for sure. I think, if you have like a multi-year view, and this is kind of where I see events really kind of playing a big role that is not utilized enough. VC-backed organization has an exit strategy, 5, 10 years, whatever it is. Their event strategy is usually quarterly, annually. They review it, do it again. They rarely take that 10-year view to align their event growth with their exit strategy. And if we look at perfect examples, like WorkHuman is a wonderful example of where that's kind of come into play, because they started their first event in 2015 with 300 people. Now it's their 10th anniversary, and they have multiple shows. They're getting thousands of people. They used to be called Globoforce. They changed their name to WorkHuman because of their event.
Interesting.
Right? It's absolutely huge, like HubSpot Inbound, Dreamforce, like all examples of great events that has grown with an organization. And if you kind of have that long-term viewpoint, you can roll it back and see the steps and the stages that are going to help you get to that point. What was the original question? I had a reason I was talking about that.
Yeah, it was about just the metrics, right? How do you measure the success?
Yes.
Yeah.
So with that kind of multi-year viewpoint, you're effectively creating the event funnel, right? And Mark Hylands talks about this. I can't coin this. This is Mark Hylands from TAC, formerly of AirMeet, says that there are 3 stages. There's discovery. People don't know you, right? So that's building up the know, like, and trust factor, getting people to know you, getting them to like you, getting people to trust you. Then there's the engagement piece, which helps turn these people that then know, like, and trust you into customers. And then there's the growth phase, which is your kind of user conferences. That's harnessing referrals and recommendations and community. So all of a sudden you have an event, you've got a long-term view, you've got a funnel help you get to that. So simply tracking those metrics of how they're moving from each phase to the next phase, I think is incredibly useful. But every organization is going to have different sales cycles, different ways to market. So having a broad brushstroke on what to track, I think is
Sounds. Martin, how can people get in touch with you? Can they reach you at LinkedIn, email address? What's the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn, always LinkedIn. right? My name's Martin Fretwell. I'm on LinkedIn, event-driven growth. And as an incentive, actually, if anyone does, is this okay? Is this okay that I'm doing this? I suppose if I say, you can always cut me out, right?
It's all your time, and feel free. Again, the ideal here is for people to connect with each other. So feel free. It's all your time. Yeah.
Yes. So if you DM me the words "adventurers rise," which is a phrase that I'm going to champion until, like, even if nobody says it in 10 years' time, I'm going to still be saying "adventurers rise." So DM me that, and I will drop over one of the interviews that I did for the Event Driven Growth Virtual Summit with people like Mark Hylands, for example. I'll drop you one of those for free.
That's brilliant. Guys, whoever's listening, if I would be you, I will go ahead and I will DM Martin right away on LinkedIn. Martin, thank you so much. I have to say, again, I do these podcasts pretty much every week or every other week. I have to say, like, you have quite a unique perspective on many things, whether it's what's your best B2B event, how do you track reporting and so forth. So I loved a lot. And again,
yeah, maybe a little bit too out there.
I personally have learned like some really unique way of how to host events in general, but also dinners in particular, because again, as I mentioned, I host 10 dinners also a year. And again, I had my own playbook up until you mentioned some of the great tips, and I will personally go ahead and try them out in my next dinner that I'm going to plan.
I'll be curious to see how they feel. And if you don't mind, because I know we're over time here, but because you mentioned that point about like a unique take. The reason being is I was working for an organization in the US. That's where I started doing all of these executive dinners and worked for myself. And then I lost my visa. And had to return to the UK. And it's unusual to be able to continue running events in the US when I can't get there personally. So I had to find ways around, like there are certain kind of things that I think we have as event professionals, like you have to be on site. What if things go wrong?
Exactly.
And I think we create, Vishen Lakiani of Mind Valley has this term called rules, and it's bullshit rules that we live by.
Yep.
That we don't have to. And as events professionals, we have a ton of those, right? So kind of like challenging those rules that we have as events professionals is like, it really gives me access to new ways of thinking and doing things that have changed my career and massively helped.
And again, see, events are all about just new, different experiences. And again, as far as you can challenge those, you come up with things on the table that are fresh, I have to say. And again, it's the freshness that matters in the events all the time, because if it's going to be the same experience in every other event, they will not be as memorable as we all want those events to be. Yeah. Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for listening. Again, if you want to keep on learning about the best practices and everything else about the events industry, please subscribe to our podcast. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Younas.